Groups on the continent of Asia began, with the help of various persons representative of medicine of that time, which by the way was then very superior to contemporary medicine, very earnestly to seek the causes of that human misfortune. After long impartial labors, they discovered, in the first place, that the men who contracted the disease were exclusively those in whose subconsciousness, for some reason or other, there never arose any impulse of faith in anybody or anything. And secondly, that those adult men who periodically performed the normal ritual of intercourse with women were not at all subject to this disease. When the news of this conclusion of theirs spread over the continent of Asia, all the rulers and chiefs of the separate Asiatic groups of that time grew alarmed, as almost all the regular troops at their disposal consisted of adult men, and moreover the constant wars permitted none of them to live normally with his family. In view of the fact that at that period all the governments of the separate Asiatic countries needed and wished to have healthy and strong armies, they were compelled to conclude a truce, and either themselves assemble or send their representatives to one place, namely to the capital of what was then called the Kilmantushian Khanate, in order jointly to find a way out of the situation which had arisen. After serious reflections and deliberations, these rulers of the various independent groups of Asiatic peoples, or their representatives, together, of course, with the representatives of medicine of that time, then came to the conclusion that it was possible to deal with the situation which had arisen, only if what is called prostitution should be established everywhere on the continent of Asia, as is now the case on the continent of Europe, and only if the power-possessing people should deliberately encourage its development and cooperate in its success. Almost all the chiefs of the governments of that time fully agreed with this conclusion of the representatives of all the peoples of the continent of Asia who had gathered together in the capital of the Kilmantushian Khanate, and without experiencing any remorse of conscience, they began from then on not only to encourage and aid women in general, except indeed just their own daughters, to engage in this occupation so abhorrently repulsive to the nature of every normal person, but also to give, even with a feeling of benevolence, as if this were the most considerate manifestation of man, every possible assistance to women, without distinction of caste or religion, who might wish to leave or to go anywhere for this filthy purpose. Now that we've touched upon this subject, allow me, respected doctor, to digress and tell you here the reflections, in my view very interesting and wise, of this same mullah uncle of mine concerning the causes in general of the arising of this evil and scourge of contemporary civilization. Once, on one of the days of Ramadan, when we were conversing as usual while awaiting the call of the mullah of our district announcing the meal hour, and we happened to be speaking about this human scourge, he then, among other things, said, "It is wrong and unjust of you to blame and despise all women of this kind. Most of them are not themselves personally to blame for their sad lot. One should blame exclusively only their parents, husbands, and guardians. And precisely their parents, husbands, and guardians should be blamed and despised, who have allowed the arising in them during their age preparatory to adult being, while as yet they have not their own good sense of the property called laziness. Although at this age this laziness is as yet only automatic in them, and young people have not to make very great efforts to overcome it, and are able in consequence, on acquiring their own good sense, not to allow it to gain complete control over them, yet nevertheless, as regards the organization of women's psyche, the active principle must, owing to results not dependent on our will, but ensuing from world laws, unfailingly participate in every initiative and in every good manifestation of theirs. And it is just precisely in the early years of the adult life of these contemporary unfortunate prospective women mothers, thanks to the various ideas of the people of contemporary civilization concerning equal rights for women, existing there under the catchwords equal rights, equal opportunities, etc., ideas which are now already widespread everywhere on the earth, which are naive to the understanding of a man who has lived his life normally, and which are unconsciously accepted also by the majority of contemporary men, that these contemporary, not yet completely formed, prospective women mothers, on the one hand, not having around them the law-conformable requisite sources of the active principle, such as their parents, guardians, and husbands, to whom the responsibility for them passes from the moment of marriage, and on the other hand, thanks to the intensive process of imagination and enthusiasms which is proper to proceed in them, and which is also in this transitional age foreordained by nature, according to law, for the purpose of better actualizing the data for the development of their good sense, they, as it were, gradually absorb the said automatic laziness into their very nature. And this laziness remains in their nature as a progressive and indispensable necessity. A woman with such a nature, of course, does not wish to fulfill the obligations of a genuine woman mother. And in view of the fact that being a prostitute enables her just to do nothing and to experience great pleasure, there is gradually formed in her, both in her nature and in the passive consciousness proper to her, a factor for the irresistible urge to be a woman female. But in consequence of the fact that in the instinct of each of these women, the data proper to all women for the impulse of shame are not atrophied suddenly and at once, and none of them, with all her mental wishing, can endure to become such a woman in her own native country. Every one of them always instinctively and half-consciously tries to get away to some other country where, far from her native land, without any inner discomfort, and also without doing anything, she can abandon herself entirely to this profession personally pleasant for her in almost every respect. And as regards the prevalence everywhere on the earth at the present time of this human misfortune, the cause of this is, in my opinion, exclusively only those contemporary men in whom, owing to the same reasons, there arises, as in those young women, future prostitutes, a similar what is called organic essential need to do nothing except enjoy oneself. And one of the forms of satisfying this criminal need of these ulcers among contemporary people consists, in the given case, in enticing and assisting such women to leave their native land for some foreign country. It has already been noticed by many contemporary sensible people that these two different sexes, victims of the same disease, as a rule, consciously and instinctively seek and find each other, and in the given case, they,